Alrighty.
Okay, so we've been talking about, we finished last time talking about Ezekiel's prophecy and how it was fulfilled, the 390 years and the 40 years fulfilled right to the day. And so we're starting on slide 303 today. And we're looking at examples of the uniform Hebrew calendar and how it's aligned with the uniform Enoch. And just as a quick review, the uniform Enoch is always the same every year and very simple. But the uniform Hebrew has 33 different years. They all have, they come out the same after 33 years. They line up exactly with the uniform, with 33 uniform Enoch years. So they total 33 times 364 days. But they have the neat Hebrew feature of going forward and backwards 10 or even 20 days each year. So anyway, this gives a lot of flexibility. Okay, with that in review, we're going to start looking at other examples in history. And first, to do that, though, we have to line up 1 year. And so the year I'm going to pick, and you can just pick one. I don't have, there's no stars to line up. The uniform Enoch doesn't line up with the real equinoxes or anything. So I just get to pick 1 year. But after picking one, everything else is determined. So the this is for the great years. The regular years are tied to the calendars, and so you don't get to pick there so much. Anyway, the year that I pick is right at the beginning of mortality. And that mortality happened on Passover on several calendars. On star calendar, Hebrew calendar, on I think it's about 3, and on the other calendars it was the beginning. It was one creation on 4 different calendars. Anyway, it's a major, probably the major starting date of all of the calendars. More on that date than any other. Anyway, it's a good starting day to go into lineup. But that day was Passover when they left. They passed over from a higher kingdom into a lower kingdom. Passover can be tied with death, like the Exodus. It's a death and a birth. A lot of the Egyptians died, but the nation of Israel was born out of the womb of Egypt into the wilderness of life. Anyway, to get to the end of this sentence, the year we line up is end Passover on the uniform Enoch calendar, and have that be the year when Adam and Eve passed over into mortality. So next slide, 304. All righty, now we're just going to look at a few uniform Enoch years. These are all going to be holy years, which are in great years. Jacob was born in a holy year. Trees is a day, that's what the Jews call it. It's like an Arbor Day. They plant trees on that day. It ties to Moses's birthday. I have no idea why they call it trees. I don't know what else to call it, so I call it trees. But it's a priesthood day of some sort, and I wish I knew a better name. Anyway, it's a holy year, and it's on the 14th of midwinter on the uniform Enoch, big great year. And his twin wives are both born in the year consecration. which is 10 spring. It's like that's for choosing the Lamb Day. Let's go to 305. Rebecca is also born in a holy year, 14 winter, and her twin sons Jacob and Esau were born 30 years later in 14 midwinter. Again, those are holy years, and I don't have names for them, and I'm not sure the Jews do either, or I would probably use them. Next slide, 306. The Exodus began on one late winter was the day. See, the lowercase is the day, caps and lowercase. And then it's interesting, anyway, Saturday is not, I don't have that in red as a holy day or anything because it overlaps. Anyway, it's not. And then the year is end Passover. So the Exodus begins again in a Passover. It's end Passover, but at least it's a Passover kind of year. And that's a holy day in a holy year on the uniform calendar. 40 years later, they enter the Promised Land on a very clever matching date, which is end Passover on one late spring. Each month, and day number 1 on every month is a holy day, just a blue minor holy day. But anyway, see, they begin on the year in the Passover, and they end on the day end of Passover. So it's kind of like matching bookends. But the second one is they are finishing their Passover on end Passover, so that's a perfect match. Okay, this is mainly just to show you that these things, we only line up one year, and all these other years line up. Okay, number 307. Mary and her infant son. Here they go to the temple. Is on New Year in the year 1 mid-spring. And Easter also, the Magi come also in that same year on an Easter Sunday. Next slide, 308. Jesus begins his public ministry again in a holy year. And see, the holy years, he starts his ministry 30 years after his birth, and the months on the Enoch calendar are 30 days long, so this works out to be just 30 days. 30 years, in other words, 30 years, 30 days, it's a day to a year. And then the transfiguration of Jesus and the resurrection are both in the same year, and that is in the year of first fruits. And see, that's another clever thing. The year of first fruits is always on the fourth day of the mid-spring month. And it was the 4th year. I mean late spring. I'm sorry. He starts his ministry in late spring. And on the 4th day of late spring, which is 3 days after AD 30, is AD 33. And that's first fruits. So again, a very clever kind of thing here going on. There was something else I was going to say, transfiguration. Oh, I wanted to emphasize when the years start. This is a tricky thing. They have different starting points on years. The months, this is true of talk about the Hebrew calendar today that Jews are now using. They call the first month, according to what they were told in the Bible, is in the spring, is the spring month, Nisan. The Tishri is the 7th month in the fall. But when they number the years and when they really celebrate New Year's Day, they celebrate it starting in the fall on Rosh Hashanah. They have 2 New Years. The other one they call for the festivals. They sort of call it New Year for festivals, and then the New Year and for Sabbath years starts in the fall. Well, when I started this work, it was clear that Sabbath years start in the fall, and that's clear from the Bible. This is all in the Bible. They plant in the fall, and when they do this, you work for 6 years and rest in the 7th. The 7th year you start to rest in is in the fall. That's when they would plant, and so they don't plant in the Sabbath year. When it came time to find out how these great years worked, they work like Sabbath years. And I call them named years and Sabbath years. So they start in the autumn. And that is why the transfiguration of Jesus in 0 autumn and the resurrection the following spring are both in the same year, first fruits. That I thought was worth a few extra minutes to go over, because I don't say that very clearly anywhere in my papers, and that question came up recently. Okay, next slide, 309. Let's see if I want to look at this. This is the kind of stuff that was too tricky and I want to skip. Oh, it's just showing another thing where things line up. Where the Hebrew, the UH year lines up with the perpetual Hebrew year. The year is they also have great years. And the great year, again, at mortality. Maybe we might be switching to a new subject here. I haven't looked ahead on these slides today. But mortality, don't go ahead yet on the slide. Mortality that I said everything started on the perpetual Hebrew calendar, that year is 1 Nisan, which is the first year in the spring, and the year 1 on the Hebrew calendar wheel. So I'm just saying, okay, let's go to slide 10 now, or 310. Now we're going to go to perpetual Hebrew calendar years. So that was showing the same thing happens with perpetual Hebrew. We haven't talked about those yet as far as years are concerned. And again, on that last slide, what it was really about was you have to pick 1 year to line up, and then all the years will line up because they all come off of that wheel. And you just keep going around it. The year you line up was mortality, but instead of being on Passover, it's on 1 Nisan. That's New Year's Day. Okay, given that, now we're going to look at how years line up. Abraham is born, we already knew he was born on atonement. We've done that before in the Hebrew calendar, but now the year is 1 Ab. That is really important. Ab means father, and his name is going to be Abraham, father of nations, or father of many, something multitudes. So he's known as Father Abraham, and he's born in the month one father. I mean, so it's not just that he's in a holy year, it's a meaningful holy year. Noah dies later not later, just earlier, on the day lights, but in the year trumpets. And again, and trumpets is Rosh Hashanah in the fall. Rosh Hashanah means head. See, Rosh Hashanah means head of the year. Rosh is head. And so that's like them saying New Year's Day, but that's in the fall. The Bible does not call it New Year's Day or Rosh Hashanah. New Year's Day is in the spring. It calls it the Feast of Trumpets. So that's the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, next slide, 311. Jacob has this dream of a ladder going up to heaven, which I would like to talk about in the questions after. I don't think I'll forget. But if we're hemming and hawing for questions, I can talk about Jacob's ladder now, which I never have been able to before. So he dreams of this ladder going to heaven, and it's on 1 Nisan, which is New Year. We've talked about that. And he begins to work for Rachel, work for Rachel, meaning work in order to earn Rachel as his wages. On 15 days later, on 16 Nisan. What year was that in? That's another New Year. Now, these New Years only come around on the average of every 364 years. And like I said, they're staggered. So they're either about 384 or 354, something like that. But it's once in 300 years you have a new year. And so that important dream was in a new year on the Hebrew calendar. So this is partly to show you how it's used, but it's partly, if we understood better, we'd be really impressed and say, wait a minute, this is important. This is really important things here going on. And we'll see that in a minute. After 14 years of work, Jacob's children, the last 4 children born at the time he was working, were all born on Hebrew holy days in the year Passover. So Passover comes 15, well, that's not shown here. The year is New Year, and 14 years later would be the 15th of Nisan, and the 15th of Nisan is called Passover. So he started working. It's really cool. He starts working in a big year, New Year, and he works 7 years for Rachel, except they swap brides on him. And so now he's got to work another 7 years for Rachel. So he works 14 years, and so it's Passover. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but mathematically, it's just really slick how everything lines up. And now let's see what the next slide is, 312. Well, yeah, let's just go on. There's a lot of other things, but that's just too much. We'll just stick to the slides. Now, if you remember, he was going to leave after he got his wife, and he talks it over with Laban. Laban says, keep working for me, and instead of giving you women, I will give you, the different kinds of sheep, the speckled and cattle. We'll build your equity in herds. And so he does that, and it's for 6 more years. And I remember I've always thought that was funny that it was 6, because most things in Jacob's life were on 7s. But the 6 years made it. It's the end Passover on the Hebrew calendar is only 6 days, 6 days after. It's on the 21st. The Passover is on the 15th, and end Passover is on the 21st. It's on the 7th day, but it's not a whole week later. It's 6 days later. So 6 years later fits perfectly here, that now it's gone from Passover to end Passover. And so after 6 years, that's when he takes his family, and he kind of has to sneak away because Laban doesn't want him to leave. He's, I mean, a great worker, and he's just getting some cows and stuff. But it's time to go back home. So he takes his family to Canaan, and this is where he passed over the river. It's in the year-end Passover. And this is where they talk about fighting an angel, and an angel mentions a new name. You know, it's tricky. When does he actually get the new name? The angel or messenger, whoever he's fighting, says your name will be changed to Israel from Jacob. But then later on, he's at Bethel and makes an offering to God, and God speaks to him, and God says, henceforth your name will be Israel. So it looks like it actually is changed later. Anyway, you have to read things carefully when you're trying to find the exact date of when things happened. In any case, the famous story of the wrestling the angel was on New Year's Day in the year-end Passover. So the 14 and the 6 fit perfectly with New Year, Passover, and end Passover. Next slide. Now we're going to move to Moses. Next slide, 213. Okay, we're almost going to be done here. The Exodus from Egypt and from Eden that we just talked about, both are passing over into wilderness, and both were in a Passover year. Of course, that's what everybody thinks Passover is about when the Jews celebrate Passover year. They're remembering one in particular, when they left Egypt and when Israel was born as a nation. A whole lot of people went from slaves to a very large nation, and just as when they crossed this river. And crossing the river is like breaking water birth. It's like birth. And anyway, they pass over into the wilderness, and the year is New Year. So there's another New Year. We just saw there was one New Year with Jacob, and now, and this is, I think, the next one. This was 300 and whatever it is, 50 years later, but it comes out right on the year. But it's not 364, it's some other number, but that number, which comes off of that wheel, works out perfectly. That's how I knew, that's how these were discovered. I just saw that these dates work all through history, and they're still working today. Still working today. Let's just move here. I'll jump around too much. So that was another New Year, was right in the year of the Exodus. And other New Year events, in other words, what happened in that year was not only leaving Egypt, but 6 days later, the parting of the Red Sea at the end of Passover, the 10 Commandments on first fruits, and then Golden Calf Day, which was on a decision day. And so it's, you know what, it's 25 after, and no, I think we're going to do 2 more quick slides. You'll go to 314. You look at David. David is born on a decision day in a year of end Passover, and then his son Solomon is born also on a holy day, 1 Tammuz, which is beginning of summer, in a holy year. So both, people aren't born so much in these holy years. That's rare. I mean, you've only got so many holy years, and you can only line up a few people. So David and Solomon get lined up, and they're both on holy years. You have Abraham, but you don't have, I don't think you have Isaac and Jacob. You can't do all of them on holy years. there aren't that many, and they're very far apart on the average. And so anyway, you have David and Solomon, and now let's go to one more, and that is the lost 10 tribes. And here is another new year. The lost 10 tribes when they went into the Assyrian captivity. What these holy years are more for, they're not for birth dates so much, except for the really big ones. They are for events where nations are going. Look at what they were. Jacob goes in, has the dream of the ladder, and he's going to marry, and all these nations are going to be born. And that was in a new year. And then you get to the Exodus. Again, a whole nation's going to be born. See, Moses isn't born in a special year, nor Aaron or Miriam, but the Exodus is in a special year. And you can't do the other. Well, anyway, you can only do so much, and you get the idea. Now, here is another Exodus type thing, the Assyrian captivity. I've got about 723 BC. The standard story, most of my dates agree with regular scholars. This one, most scholars say it's 722 BC. I have read papers where it's not sure, and some say 23. The Assyrian chronology is fairly well established because they did things like write down when eclipses happened, and they write down, anyway, they had pretty good records. Nevertheless, this is too good to pass up, and I throw my hat in the ring with the 723 BC. And it's also on a holy day, but the main thing is the year. So it's another new year. So this is another 364 roughly years after things. Okay, we're going to stop there for today on the slide. So we'll start on 316 next time. And now we are going for questions. And I will push the magic chat button. Come on, magic. Okay, yes, I'm reminded the Jacob's ladder. Here's, let's do this other question first. You mentioned a previous article about UE and the concept of the implied zero. How does that, oh, this is a general question on DC 29 and 30 LDS version. It says there that in everything that God has made, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. That is all over, well, it's in everything God has made. I just think of life, like a woman that dies in childbirth. Her last day is his first day. It has to do with a point being, well, I don't want to get too technical. Let's do the simple one. The simple one we did on the slide. Maybe we can actually go. I'm trying to think how quickly I could find it. While I talk, I'm going to be looking for the slide it is. And I can give you the number if I find it. But we had a slide that was showed a clock face, and it said, okay, wait a minute, I think, no, that was, yeah, go to slide 36. Okay, question, where is the zero on the clock? And then make sure you're thinking, which is earlier, 11:30 a.m. or 12:30 a.m.? And then normally you think, well, yeah, 11:30 is before 12:30. But if you think, you say, wait a minute, 11:30 a.m. is almost noon, and 12:30 a.m. is just after midnight. And so what's going on here? Well, what's going on is if you do the military kind of time, instead of a 12, they put a 0 there, and they call that the 0 hour. And that's what it is. The 12 is really a 0. The last is actually the first. The numbers on this clock are where the hour ends. So if you could have a 0 here instead of a 12. And so then the day starts at midnight at 0 hours. And when it gets to the 1 signals that 1 hour has passed. 1 o'clock is not the beginning of the first hour, it's the end of the first hour of the day. And so you go around to the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock noon is the end of the morning. The point is the 12 is the same as a 0. The last is the first. And on these sacred calendars, some of them have all numbers, like the Trecina counts from 1 to 13. But that 13 is really a 0. And when you look at how they number a Trecina week, it's named for the day 13. It's not named for the day 1. The day 1 is after the first day is over. It's just like a clock. It really starts, a Trecina starts on the beginning of day 13, just like a day starts on the beginning of 12 o'clock. See, you probably never thought of a clock this much. It's actually tricky, and we just get used to using it without thinking. So on a Trecina where it's numbered 1 to 13, the 13 is really a 0. On this clock, the 12 is really a 0 in a way. The first is the last is first. It's extremely important because it happens all the time. And here, there's one more example. The exact moment of a new moon. You're going to do a lunar month. When are you going to start? What are you going to call the first day of the month? And this is something where the Jews actually don't have it right. I mean, these are tricky questions, but they need to be answered. And the Lord is very consistent on how he does it. So let's say you've discovered the day on which the new moon, the exact new moon is, or even your theoretical new moon. You know when it is. Now, what day is that? Is that the first day? Or is that the last day? Or is it a 0th day? And the answer is, that is really the last day of the month, which can be thought of as the 0. See, there's no 0 is nothing. 0 is not really a number. That's why you don't put it up there. 0 is, if you have 0 money, your pocket's empty. You can't say, I have $0, or you could say I have, 0 gold coins. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have anything. So the 1 counts when I have $1. I can say, okay, 1 is one I've got. So the day of the new moon, I got to keep this simpler. The day when the moon is new is not ever day 1. Day 1 is the day after that. That is the last day of the last month. And that works for all of the calendars, the Venus, every one of them. The first day is the one after the event, which started it. And okay, and when you're on the Enoch calendar, that's why I call the equinox is 0, but I call it 0 of the next month. So 0 spring is the spring equinox. The first day is the day after that. And the neat thing about 0, it is a transition. Technically, it's the last day of the last month, but it shows the transition. And when I've just recently figured out how to do the transition years and how, when you put in the star year transition and all of that, you do it in the 0 equinox year, which is a transition. So by the time you get to year 1, the stars are lined up with the equinox and everything. and that star lasts for 500 years. But the transition, so the 0 is a transition time. That's a lot of words, but that's a long, that's an important and difficult question, I think. Okay, okay, wait a minute. And also I'm being asked, oh, so the Hebrews start their day at what time? 6 p.m. When you're doing an observational calendar, you call it sunset, but that's not the sacred ones that I know about. There's probably real observational ones, and I don't know anything about them. The ones I do are all average, meaning average time. And the Hebrews, if you ask them, it's 6 p.m. They don't go out and look at the sun. And they're right on that. It's 6 p.m. And the same with the Mayan calendar, starts in the morning at 6 a.m. in the morning. It's not sunrise. So it's the same all through the year. So there you go. Okay, now something new just happened, and because you people are looking for more and I don't know, faithful or whatever to trying to learn this stuff, I will share with you. I've already told a couple in an email, but I've got like little secret mushrooms and something. A paper came out last week, and it turned out it came out on Sunday, I guess, Saturday or Sunday, and then on Wednesday of this week, another paper came out in my work. It took 3 days to do, and it's something I've been wanting for myself. I have all the star data in a big database, what do you call it, spreadsheet. But it's a pain for me to be looking up stuff on a spreadsheet. I have so many computer apps open, and I open the spreadsheet and it dies. And I thought I need those tables on my web page, where it's in an HTML in a table on my web page. That's what I put online on Wednesday. And it's got all 371 stars. That's 364 plus the 7 leap stars. And it's got things like the brightness and names, and it's got stuff you might want to know about them. In fact, it's got why I'd call it, where the name came from. So that took 2 or 3 days to do. It turned out that wasn't trivial. But after it was done, I thought it'd be neat to I have a column in there for lunar mansions. 28 of those stars are lunar mansions, and I had a paper on that something like last October, where I said these are important stars, and they're the 28 ones, and they correlate to a lot of things. Well, one thing they correlate to is 20 of those 28 are the same as the 20 signs of the sacred round, those glyphs, the 20 days. And they're in the same order. So I thought it'd be nice to put, you click on the number from 1 to 28 of what lunar mansion number it is, and it would tell you what picture on the sacred round it correlated to. So in my mind, I was just adding old information, fun stuff for those that care about these things. And as I did it, my mind kind of opened up, and I started to see correlations I've never seen before. And one of them is, you'll laugh, that I've never seen it. The actual Mayan priests told the Spanish padres, or priests, were explaining what those 20 symbols mean. And when they're in a circle. You've seen them on your Mexican briefcase. You know, there's a circle, and they start at the top with conception, and they go all through life. And after life, basically, you go down into hell. And at the bottom one, number 10, at the bottom, it's a picture of a dog, and it's really Anubis, the one that takes you down into hell. guides you. And who was a jackal in the Egyptian version. And basically, that's your day of greatest suffering down in hell. The priests said that the next day after that, which is monkey, they said that is the first rung on a ladder to start ascending out of hell. Well, you would think that I might put it together and think the second picture is the second rung and the next picture is the third rung. There's 10 more pictures that take you up. The last rung is Lord, where you become like God. And they all agree on that. I mean, the Mayan name for that day is Ahau, A-H-A-U, which means Lord. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm getting this from much as I can from Native Americans. Well, I never put it together that those are 10 steps because one of the problems with all of us is when you think you know something, you're closed to learning more. And I thought I knew. In fact, you've probably heard me in these classes when I talked about the sacred round before and the 20 days. I said the first 13 take you from conception up through resurrection. And then I said the last 7 are always these mysterious things where the native priests just did sort of a mumbo jumbo, you shake off the ashes from your purification. That's the day you shake off ashes. Well, what does that mean? And each one, you receive enlightenment, you receive perfection. And it's like, I don't know what all of those things are. And when I looked at them, it looked like they were 7 ordinances. So until a couple of days ago, I thought there were, and to me, resurrection, it's like that's the end. It's like you start at birth and you end at resurrection. What more? I mean, after that, you're playing a harp, right? And on a cloud somewhere or something. That's as far as I knew. So I thought it was 13 steps and 7 ordinances, even though I haven't said that very clearly because I haven't known that. But because of that, I sort of didn't even consider the possibility that the first step down that dog at the very bottom is the first of 10 steps going up. Here's the little secret thing, and we're just about to end. What I did then is if you go to my latest article, which is, top of my webpage, it's the most recent article, and it's this big table of 300 stars. One of the columns says LM. Oh, yeah, you can go to it. Yeah, I forgot you can do it. Go to it. Click on, star data table. Click on that. Very good. Now, don't click on, you can click on one. You want the first as the last and the last is the first. See the one on the LM. Yeah, right there. Well, no, just click on that one. It's in italics. The ones that there's 20 of those numbers are in italics. This is the first lunar mansion, and I call it Angel. Do you see the one and you see the LM in the middle? Right there. Click on that. Just click on it. Okay, now let's read that. It brings up a little box, and it says flower. Now that is the 20th. That's the top one. That's the one I said is called Lord. That's the picture as a flower. So on the sacred round, it's called Lord. That is the 10th and last step to becoming God. Now, I couldn't say it there, because I'm doing this for Christians and non-Mormons and everybody. But I mean, when the ones where they say you have become a God, that's the picture. But notice this is the last step. Flower is the last picture, but angel is the first lunar mansion. See, the first is the last. The lunar mansions don't have a 0. They go from 1. Anyway, just trust me. I spent some time making sure that was right, and I believe it is. So the first lunar mansion. Anyway, if you go down on those different ones, we're out of time now. But if you go down and click on just the ones in italic, you can't click on the 2. It's not in italics. It's not one. That's one of the 8 that skip. Click on 3 on seed. See this? You'll see this. Seed is light, which is the first sign. See, flower is the 0th sign. Light is the first sign, and it represents creation or conception. What day is that on? It's on the day seed, which is short for the seed of woman. And that's the actual Latin name. Spica is the name of the star, and it means the grain of wheat. And the seed of woman is her son. So the star picture is of a seed representing conception of a son. And the Aztec, Mayan, Indian, Native American picture represents conception. That's going to work for all 20 of these lunar mansions. They tie to the 20 days. The thing you can do on your own time now is go down, and when you read the last ones, it'll say, this is the first step, this is the second, fourth step. I've never understood the steps before. Yeah, click on that one. This is storm, lightning of a firestorm. It's the 9th step. Leo, goes with the lion. Leo is crushing the head of Hydra. And the way this is done at the end of the world is it's destroyed by burning. The point is, before, I didn't understand what this meant, but it's talking about that when you get up to step 9, you'll be the one in the lion's place. You'll be doing the destruction by the burning. It's what I'm thinking now. I'm not saying it, I don't know this, but I'm open to this possibility and just saying, well, that's some unknown ordinance that I don't understand. And the one before it, anyway, you can go through them all, but the point is that there's information there. I am now have changed where I'm thinking those are 10 steps, and now so Denver's always talking about 7 steps afterwards, and talking about different angels at different levels. I don't know that this is the same as those. By the way, it still looks like 13 plus 7 to me. The 13 takes you up to resurrection, and the other ones are after. And when Denver talks, to me, it sounds like we're at step 1 or trying to get to step 1 or something, and then most of the steps are after. And in fact, did I? Yeah, I'm still with you.
Yeah,
I don't understand if these are. I'm just saying I am open to these being steps that I have not understood before, and similar to the 7 steps he keeps talking about, similar to whatever Jacob's ladder, what that was about, we talked about. Okay, now I went way over time. Anyway, those are the secret mushrooms for the night, or click on those numbers, and it's stuff that I've never understood before or published before. So there you go. All righty. Next time we will start from wherever it was, 313 or something. That's it.
All right. Hey, thanks everyone for joining. We'll get up on Recorders or up on Restoration Archives and on YouTube. Thanks, John, as always, and look forward to seeing everyone next week. Thanks.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.